Hello and welcome to episode 12 of the Our Knits podcast. My name is Katie and this is a podcast mostly about knitting and other crafty goodness. I'm coming to you from Long Island, New York, where I live with my partner and our two cats, our crested gecko and our betta fish. You can find me on social media. I'm on Instagram as @arrowknits. And I'm on Ravelry as knitmusic. There is also an Our Knits podcast Ravelry group, which hasn't been active in quite a little while. I need to be better about that, but I'm supposed to post my show notes there. I will get back to doing that regularly now that I am back to podcasting regularly. So that's where you can find me if you'd like to, and let's get started. So I actually don't have any works in progress to show you this episode. First of all, last episode I filmed about a month ago. So this is the first weekend in December right now. It's December 2nd today that I'm filming, and I filmed about a month ago. So this is the closest or the shortest distance between two podcasts, the shortest amount of time between two podcasts that I've gone for a little while. So I've actually been knitting quite a lot in the past month, more than I've knit collectively probably in the last year and a half to 2 years. So I thought I should share some progress with you. I actually don't have any works in progress to share. I would have had one, but I cast it off last night and I promptly wove in the ends and even soaked it and got it pinned out. But it's small enough that I'm just going to show it to you on the blocking mats. So I guess let's get started with my finished objects. So first, I'm going to show you a really quick knit that I did. I knit a hat for my partner Liz. She had requested a new hat and she chose this yarn from my stash. So it's dark, so it's not coming up well on camera. There you go. So this is just a regular watch cap. This pattern is a super oldie but goodie for me. This is actually a Yankee Knitters design. And this is Yankee Knitter design number 26, I believe, hats and mittens. And it's got a watch cap pattern. It's got like a stocking cap pattern, which would be really cool for Christmas time because you look like an elf. And then it's got mitten patterns as well, all in one actual pattern. And then it's for worsted weight and bulky weight yarn. So all the directions are given. So the only thing is that pattern is it's written flat. So it's written to be worked back and forth and then to be seamed up. But I knit my hat in the round, and I've done this before using the Yankee Knitter pattern. It's great because it's got all the math in it for children's to adult. I think it's actually even toddler through adult. And then there's a woman's size adult and a men's size adult, so a smaller and a larger adult size, which is great. So it's like a really good deal if you have that pattern. A lot of her patterns are like that in Yankee Knitter designs. I first discovered them way back when I worked in a yarn shop in Rhode Island when I was in college. And that shop had a lot of the Yankee Knitter patterns, and I just sort of grew fond of them. So quick and easy. Like I said, I just modified this to be knit in the round is all. So I used the same math, the same cast on number. This is the women's size, if you will. So it's just a 1x1 rib on the bottom, and then it's got some just basic decreases at the top. I used, it's just knit two together all around, which I kind of forgot that it makes that spiral shape. Had I remembered that earlier, I might have chosen to combine it with a slip knit decrease to get a little bit of a different shape at the top. But I actually didn't remember that this was a pattern that was supposed to be knit flat until I was like inches up, and then I realized that the directions didn't really make sense. But I have made this several times before, and I always do it in the round, so I just did it that way, and I forgot that it's actually not supposed to be that way. And I believe the mitten patterns are the same thing. They are knit flat and then seamed. So it's not ideal for me and my comfort level and my style of knitting. It's supposed to be easier, but honestly, I would way rather knit something in the round or with the mittens for like, I would probably use a magic loop than have to seam them, because I hate seaming. I'm not great at it, and I just think it looks nicer without them. But if you're a beginner knitter, and the thought of using DPNs or magic loop or anything like that is what intimidates you, then this pattern is great because you can knit them flat and then seam them up the back. This is super old stash yarn. This is Plymouth Yarn Select. Hold on, I wrote it down. This is Plymouth Yarn Select Worsted Merino Superwash, and this is color number 24, which I believe they just call purple. Just straight up purple. It's a very deep purple. This is old stash. So I actually have a sweater's quantity of this, and I still kind of do because I still have 5.5 skeins now. This was the 6th skein. This has been sitting in my stash probably for 8 years, 9 years, and the color is something that I'm still attracted to. However, this yarn is no longer something that I would I guess gravitate towards anymore to knit something for myself or for a gift. I will be knitting Liz a nicer hat, but she fell in love with this color in my stash, and I actually have my yarn cabinet in my kitchen, so we both see the yarn all the time, and she wanted a hat out of this, so I said why not. Because it's a superwash, it's very, I don't know what word I want to use. Springy is not the word that I'm looking for. It's got a lot of like memory to it almost, and I feel like it really grew, which I knew was likely to happen. Now, the way I've been able to combat this before with superwash yarns, and what I do with my superwash socks, is once you actually wash them in a washer and dryer, usually the dryer really helps to get everything a little bit back together. However, I do not have a washer and dryer. We have to go to the laundromat to do all of our laundry, and so I don't have as easy access anytime I want to just like throw something in the machine. So I haven't yet been able to do that with this. I blocked it the regular way. I didn't block it, I just soaked it and laid it out to dry. And I saw how huge it was, and I actually tried it with a blow dryer, which worked. It shrunk up the stitches pretty well, but I know that if I had put it in an actual dryer, it would have done a better job. So my point is that it came out a little bit loose. It's not crazy. It fits me. It fits Liz. But it's a little bit more loose than I think I would have liked. But it does fit okay. It does its job. It keeps your ears warm. And it's, again, old stash yarn and a super easy pattern. So I'm happy to do it and happy to have this hat around the house. But yeah, I'd like to throw this in the dryer and see if that doesn't help it. And now I have crazy hat hair. Okay, I can deal with that. So that's my first finished object. The other finished object I have for you is still on the blocking mats, but it's small enough, so I just took the blocking mats over here. It's something I'm really excited. I'm really excited to have knit, and it's something that's really special for me. I knit a Christmas stocking, and the Christmas stocking I knit is the Merriment Stocking by Melinda Bernardi, and it is from this book, Comfort and Joy. And this is a self-published book of Melinda's. I believe it's from 2016, and it's got seven original stocking designs to warm your holiday season. And I love this book. All of the stockings are the same cast on number, they're all the same size, but they all have different color work designs in them. So without showing you the pattern, I knit this stocking. And I actually knit it with the colors that it calls for. So to take a look, carefully hold this up on my blocking boards. Here it is, all pinned out. It looks a little bit silly right now. I feel a little bit silly holding it up like this, but I really wanted to show you, and it's just not dry yet, although almost. I pinned it out last night, but it's still damp. This is Harrisville Designs Shetland worsted weight yarn. It's 100% virgin wool. It is a super rustic yarn. It is wonderful. I love this yarn. I can't imagine making these stockings in anything that's like squishy and sort of scrumptious. This is the perfect yarn to knit these stockings. I know that this stocking will last forever, especially in this yarn. It's practically bulletproof. And it's gorgeous. They're all the colors, excuse me, are heathered. And they just are really, really pretty. So, and I just think the stocking is cool. This is a stocking for my partner, Liz, and she chose this design and wanted the original colors. So it's navy blue, well, not quite navy, it's not quite that dark, and a red and white. And I thought that was really cool because I don't always gravitate towards blues for Christmas, but I actually really love this design. So it's blocking right now. I'm really happy with the way it turned out. I used a size US 6 needles on this. I probably could have gone up to a 7. This turned out slightly smaller than my stocking, which I'll show you in a minute. I also have a stocking that I have knit for myself from this book. It came out a little bit smaller, and it could be for a couple reasons. I knit that stocking a couple of years ago, so obviously my personal tension may have changed over time, my gauge. And then also, if you look closely at this portion here, I'm thinking that this color work probably pulled my knitting in a little bit more than I had anticipated versus my stocking, which has color work in it, but you'll see that it's spread out a little bit more. So I think that that might have had an effect on it. So blocked out, this actually isn't going to be a whole lot smaller than mine. It'll be just a tad bit smaller, but at first I was a little bit freaked out about it. So I'll go ahead and show you mine now as well. So you'll see that mine is completely finished. So I have my name on it and a little hanging loop. So first you block it, then you just knit an I-cord and sew it on here to hang your stocking with. And then you duplicate stitch a name up here, which I remember having a little bit of difficulty with. I just found it challenging to make it look nice, and I'm still not 100% happy with the way my stitching came out for that, but I like it, and it's removable, so if I ever decide that I am going to practice my duplicate stitch a whole lot and become a professional duplicate stitcher, I can always redo it. But let me show you mine. So I knit for myself the Evergreen stocking from the same book. Is mine. I love this, love this. Let me see if I can get you closer to that green, that beautiful mid-tone heathered green. This stocking, I knit it in the colors that it's given, but I switched the greens. So this stocking is meant to be knit all over. Wherever I have the lighter green, it's meant to be this dark green. Hence the Evergreen stocking name. But I really like this lighter green. It's a little bit more fun and a little bit more funky, and I just fell in love with it. But you can see that the color work on this stocking is, I don't know how to explain it. It's like more spread out. So that could, be a factor in the way that the gauge turned out for me. Like there's so much color work on the blue stocking that it feels thicker even. There's just so many floats on the inside. So I think that that's definitely a factor. In my mind, I want to knit the cat's tiny Christmas stockings based off of these patterns. I don't know if it's gonna happen. I sound like a crazy lady, but I was thinking of maybe doing, half the number of stitches cast on, and then doing half the length and a heel half the size, etc., etc., and maybe use a little chart, or just make them plain. And Melinda has great instructions and charts in there to duplicate stitch like a Christmas tree on it or a snowflake. I know I just said I didn't like duplicate stitching. Oh, here's a close-up on the way my name came out. It looks pretty good. You can see the thing that I'm not happy about is like this area here, they're very open, yet it's like it's tight, so there's no room there for me to cinch that up. But I practiced it, and I actually am happy with the way this came out. I'm thinking of it less fondly than I actually feel, because I do like this. One thing I will change though is that I attached my hanging loop to the inside down here because I thought it would have more strength, but it doesn't, and it just is silly. So I'm going to actually detach this and sew it on up here, and that's how I'm going to hang Liz's as well. So that's a mod I'm going to be making to this, and that was my own thing. It's supposed to be sewn up here. I just decided that this would be better, and it was not. So this is as you can see, it's a really quite large Christmas stocking, and I actually think that the Merriment stocking is the proper size. I'll have to measure it, but I do believe that it's the actual size that it's supposed to be, and this is a little bit big. But you know, they're homemade, handmade, made with love. That's okay. But I love, love, love that book. So if you're in the market to knit a Christmas stocking for yourself or someone you love, it is the absolute perfect book. I love everything about it. And again, it's self-published, so really awesome. And that's by Melinda Bernardi. She is French Press Knits. So you may remember that a while ago, a good while ago, maybe like 8 or 9 years ago, she put out a fantastic felted slipper pattern. They look like ballerina flats, but they were felted, and I made a bunch of those. I made so many of those. So it is the same designer, French Press Knits. So those are my 2 finished objects. I've been working really, really hard on that Christmas stocking because I wanted to complete it, because I know that it's a multi-step thing. You have to knit the stocking, block it, let it dry, duplicate stitch the name on it, do the hanging loop. I actually already knit the hanging loop. It's 4 inches of I-cord. I mean, it takes just a couple minutes. So I've got that ready to go. But I wanted to make sure that I could complete it as soon as possible so that we can hang our stockings up and enjoy them for the rest of December, because we do have the apartment all decorated. We decorated a little bit early. You can see some of it behind me. Oh, also, I'm filming in a different location today from last time. I'm trying things out in our dining room because there's technically more natural light here. There's a skylight sort of in front of me and above me, obviously. There's a skylight in the kitchen that's across from me, so I think that there might actually be better lighting in here. And of course, the wall behind me isn't a dark blue, which might make things a little bit better. It's not as fun to look at, and I know there's a reflection off of our lovely Berkshire's print that's behind me, but I think that overall, probably a little bit easier to see things at this point. I don't know, just trying it out. I thought, why not? So, something that I would like to share with you is sort of I guess in a way it's sort of a work in progress, but it's kind of an ongoing thing. It's Pittsburgh Handmade Hearts, and I actually have some information on it. It's probably easier for me to just read a little bit of it aloud. I want to make sure that you get the right information about it. But basically, I've been making some of these little hearts. And the pattern that I'm using for these are crocheted. They take just a few minutes. This is 2 rounds of crochet. They're so fast. So this pattern that I'm using is called Sweethearts Applique by Bee Hooked Crochet. So Sweetheart Applique, it's a free pattern on Ravelry. This is actually from a blog post, and this is just dishcloth cotton. I think it's Lily Sugar and Cream, if I'm not mistaken, that I got from the craft store, just that I have in stash for dishcloths and things like that. But these are super fast to make, and I've been knitting them for PGH Handemade Hearts, Pittsburgh Handmade Hearts, and it's this really wonderful thing that the people who head up the Pittsburgh Creative Arts Festival, which is in the spring in Pittsburgh, they came up with this idea, and I will just read you a little bit here. Their mission is to foster compassion for those impacted by acts of violence and hatred, as well as to discourage future acts of this nature. So in particular, they came up with this for the Tree of Life Synagogue victims. And that event happened on October 27th. And so what they're doing is asking people to make hearts that measure 2 to 2.5 inches. And they can be really any medium, knit, crochet, sew. You could do anything though. You could probably make little wooden hearts if that's your thing. 2 to 2.5 inches, and what they're going to do is spread them around Pittsburgh with little notes of encouragement and joy and beauty, and just try to spread some positivity throughout Pittsburgh. And I mentioned on my last podcast that I work for Long Island Yarn and Farm, and we are going to be a collection site for these hearts. So if you're a Long Islander and you're interested in making some of these little hearts, Long Island Yarn and Farm out in Yaphank is a drop-off location. I'm going to, whether or not I get to do show notes on Ravelry or not, I will make sure that in my YouTube description I will put a link to the PGH Creative Arts Festival website where they have more information about PGH Handmade Hearts. There are also lots of other shops that have volunteered to be drop-off locations. I'm sure that some of you watching are not local Long Islanders, so you can actually take a look there and see if any of those shops are close to you that you could drop off hearts for. We are also, Long Island Yarn Farm is also planning on having a donation basket with us for the hearts at Vogue Knitting Live, which is in January in New York City. We're going to make sure that we have the donation basket there. So if you're headed to Vogue and you've got some hearts but you don't have a location near you that's collecting them, just save them and stop by our booth and drop them off there. So I think this is really wonderful, and you can do any knitted or crocheted heart pattern. Again, you could sew or do anything else as well. I chose to crochet them because I'm very fast at crocheting, and I think that as far as if you're going to make a flat heart, the crochet looks nice. If I were going to make a knitted heart, I would want to do one that could be stuffed, which would take me longer. So I feel like I can sort of knock out quite a few of the crocheted ones that way, which is why I chose to do it. But if you've got more time or a lot of extra polyfill hanging around, you could definitely make little stuffed ones. It'd probably be cuter, honestly. I just, like I said, I knew that I could crochet a bunch of them really quickly, so I've just been crocheting them. So that's something that's been kind of ongoing here and there for me, and they're very potato chippy. And you can use just the tiniest little amount of scrap yarn. I mean, I can't imagine this uses more than 5 yards. It can't even be 5 yards, really. So I will make sure I link, again, to more information, definitely at least on my YouTube description for this video. And yeah, check it out. I forgot to talk about another finished object that I don't have with me to show you, but I will most certainly insert photos, probably right here, of my completed Malibu shawl. So in my last episode, I was showing you my progress on it. It is the Malibu shawl by Jody Brown of Grocery Girls fame. It's her first shawl pattern. It's written for DK weight yarn, 3 different shades of DK weight yarn, a dark, a medium, and a light. It's an asymmetrical triangular shawl, and it's garter stitch with a drop stitch every now and then, and some striping, and it's got some fringe along just the finished edge. Your bind off edge ends up having fringe on it. It was a super, super easy knit, very relaxing. I was sort of speed knitting it because I knit our sample for work at Long Island Yarn and Farm. We did a island-wide Long Island knit-along for it, so I had to knit mine very fast. However, I wouldn't mind knitting that shawl again for myself. It was very relaxing. It's just garter stitch, and if you're looking for maybe your first shawl pattern, you just have to increase on one side, decrease on the other side. That's it. There's nothing else special about it, and you get to do drop stitches, which are really fun because you can, slide your yarn overs off the needle. It's oddly satisfying. So it was super fun, and I'm very happy with the way it came out. My partner was able to snap some pretty cool photos of me over at the beach with it, and I'm really happy with the way those photos came out as well. I need to make Ravelry pages for all this stuff. I've been so bad about putting things on Ravelry. I don't know when the last time was that I put a project up on Ravelry, so that's definitely something I need to work on, sort of cataloging everything and collecting all of my photos and making Ravelry entries, because I used to be really good with that. But the Malibu shawl is something that I've completed and that I'm really happy with. Again, I don't have it. It's a shop sample now at Long Island Yarn and Farm. I used 3 skeins of the sport weight because our sport weight leaned a little bit heavier. And I used, it was an alpaca blend. It blocked out beautifully. If you've ever been afraid to knit with alpaca or llama because you're afraid of blocking it or washing it, don't be. I block everything. I like to wet block my finished items. I just think it makes them look nicer, it makes them look more professional, and I've got some really nice wool wash that makes them smell really good too, so that's definitely part of it. My wool wash is from Tuft Woolens, by the way, and it is amazing. I have a bar of the Chai Spice wool wash, and it is my favorite. But anyway, that's just a sort of an added bonus to blocking my items. So I was afraid to block it because it is mostly alpaca. And I was like, this is going to hit water and it's going to grow exponentially and it's going to be terrible and I'm going to have put all this work into this item that is going to look horrendous. And it didn't. It doesn't behave like wool because it's not, but because it does have wool in there, it definitely added a lot of structure and it just opened up beautifully. Nothing crazy. It didn't turn into spaghetti on me. It didn't like open up these huge like gaping holes or anything in the garter, which is what I was afraid of. I went down a couple needle sizes. The pattern calls for a size 10. I went down to an 8. Probably could have even done a 7. Which is normal for me anyway to go down a needle size, but I'm really happy with the way it turned out and I'm really happy with the way it blocked. And then I put fringe on the edge of it and I'm really glad that I did. One word about making fringe, and I have to say it's been a super long time since I've made fringe on anything, but I do know that this is probably somewhat true for wool, but it was really true for alpaca. I used just an old index card to wind my fringe around. I measured it out, so I think the fringe was supposed to be 9 inches, so I used an index card that was 4.5 inches and I wound it around and then cut it, which saved me a lot of time. However, the first few goes at that, I realized that because alpaca is so springy, the alpaca wool blend is really springy is what I'm going with. You can really pull on that yarn and it'll give, and then you let go and it shrinks up again. So, which is the wool contributing to that. But I didn't really think about that, so I was winding it around and I cut it, and then I was measuring them. I was like, why isn't my fringe 9 inches long? Why is it? They were about 8 inches long, I guess. And I was really upset because I kept measuring the index card, and I just sort of had one of those like really like what's going on moments, and then I realized that I was pulling the yarn taut and it was expanding, and then as soon as I let go, when I was cutting them, it was going back. So just be aware of that depending on the fiber that you're using. You know, if you're using 100% cotton, that's not going to happen. But if you're using most other animal fibers, that will happen. So I still use that technique. I just wrapped very, very loosely. I tried to wrap evenly, but loosely, so that it would be all the same size, and it worked out great. I just had to do some minimal trimming when I was done. I used a crochet hook to attach the fringe. I actually found it to be kind of fun to attach the fringe. I didn't end up doing the color melt. I thought about color melting the fringe, but when I was done with the project, I had very little left of my medium and dark colors, and I tried to do some math with it to figure out like how I could blend it in there, and short of doing like one strand every other fringe, which is not really what I wanted. I wanted something that was a little bit more melty looking rather than stripy. I just decided to forego it, and I did my fringe in the lighter color in the belt flower, which I'm really happy with the way it came out. and I think I may knit myself one of those eventually. I don't really have a lot of DK weight yarn in my stash. I think I do actually have a sweater's quantity of DK weight yarn in my stash, but I don't have a hodgepodge of DK weight yarns like I have, you know, different sock yarns that I've collected like you do. But yeah, it was a fun knit, it was an easy knit, great first shawl project, a great sort of step up project for someone as well. So try it, you'll like it. That's about it that I have to show you and talk to you about. I sometimes do a patterns on my radar type thing, and released just 2 days ago was a really, really fabulous scrap yarn blanket pattern. And it sounds weird to even be saying that, but I've got partial skeins of fingering weight yarn. I've got some mini skeins as well that I've collected over the past few years that I would love to make a scrap blanket with. And I actually have a couple mitered squares done up, which I do like. I just didn't love it. I wasn't happy with it. I wasn't like addicted to the mitered squares. A lot of people get really sort of into that. And while I really like the look of it, I just couldn't get into knitting them for some reason. And I know that a scrappy fingering weight blanket is sort of something that a lot of people just have on the needles. They add on to when they can, you know, and then they have bouts of like being obsessed with their scrappy blanket pattern. I do not, but I do have all these leftovers. And so a couple days ago, a new pattern was released, and it is called Northeasterly. So it's a scrap yarn blanket pattern, and I will try to insert a picture here of it, by Skeananigans. And her real name is Melissa Alexander Loomis. Skeananigans on Instagram, and it's a chevron patterned or chevron shaped scrap blanket. So you end up knitting these stripes, and all of your little blocks, if you will, are little chevrons, or even like, you know, they almost look like arrowheads in a way, which is really, really, really my speed and something I love. So, of course, I downloaded the pattern right away. She was offering the pattern for free this weekend only, but by the time this is published and up, that promo will be over. But the pattern is only $3 on Ravelry, and it's written for fingering weight or DK weight, which is really cool, because if you do knit a lot of DK weight items, one-off things, hats, mittens, whatever, and you've got a lot of leftovers in your stash, you can also incorporate that there, or you could incorporate both and hold your fingering weight doubled, and that'll work out with your DK weight scraps as well. So it is something that I am not going to cast on for today, but it's really, really now on my mind that I can have a scrappy project going, and it's something that I'd really love to do. I don't know how big of a blanket I could make with my scraps, but I mean, that's the kind of thing that a lot of people have on the needles for years and just add to it in spurts. But it's something that I'd like to start doing. So I actually have nothing else on my needles at all. I have some lingering socks that you've seen before, so I won't bore you with those. I have a shawl that's been lingering on the needles for quite some time. I won't bore you with that either. So I need to finish up those socks and sort of get a fresh start, but I'm really excited that I had such a productive couple of months with knitting, because it is something that I'm really passionate about, and I love learning new things about knitting, and I love learning new things about yarn, and I'm really happy that I'm making it a point to make time for it in my life again, because it is very important to me. So that's about it for this episode. It's kind of a short one today because I don't have any whips, but thank you so much for joining me. If you enjoyed watching and listening, please feel free to subscribe. You can find me on Instagram as @arrowknits, and you can find me on Ravelry as knitmusic. And until next time, happy knitting and happy holidays.